Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What would you say if I told you there's a book that can teach you how to win The Bachelor?
What would you say if I told you producers caught multiple finalists reading that book in this season that's currently airing?
What would you say if I told you the producers don't want anyone to know that their show has been compromised?
How do we know all this? We wrote that book.
I'm Lizzie Pace.
And I'm Chad Kulchin.
We're the authors of How to Win the Bachelor and the hosts of the Game of Roses podcast, a bi-weekly podcast where we break down all the biggest plays, errors, and MVPs in the game of reality television.
Listen to Game of Roses wherever you get your podcasts and go to howtowinthebachelor.com to get our book.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
Hi, it's Dave here and I'm with my wife Cathy.
Hello.
And you're listening to the Cinemile where we walk home from the movies. This episode is going to be all about 2018 and the best movies that we saw this year.
And some of the worst.
And some of the worst. So we're going to do each of our top fives, which as always, neither of us has seen each other's lists.
Yes, it's top secret and thrilling stuff.
It's so thrilling.
It is actually. I get really excited trying to figure out your list, so I think I know what you've got as number one this year.
Then we're going to reel off some other great movies we saw this year, a few honourable mentions. Then we're going to do our worst of the year, our most disappointing.
We have a brand new category.
Yes, second chances.
Second chances. So movies that we may have given a negative review to that we've changed our mind on.
Or vice versa.
Movies we may have given a positive review to on first viewing that we've also changed our mind on. So it's a thrilling new category. We're very excited.
You're also going to hear from some of our favourite guests from the past year and some guests who are coming up in the next year with some of their favourite movies. Because, I guess, crucially, we haven't seen every movie that came out this year. We're not film critics. We just go to the cinema once a week if we're lucky. And we also don't live near any art house cinemas. We tend to go to very mainstream stuff. So I'm basically caveating that our lists are probably going to be pretty mainstream.
Yeah, our lists are just like of the movies we got to see this year. You know, there's at least 10 movies I could name that I wanted to see that I've missed, and many more that I haven't heard of. And It's difficult when you're working and you've got a life. It's really difficult to get to see loads of movies. So why we love getting contributors on for this episode, and we did it last year as well, is that we just get a different perspective and a different take from people. So bear in mind, these are the top 5 movies for each of us that we've A, seen this year, and B, that have resonated with us most this year.
Yes, I think that's very important to say, because I mentioned it very briefly in our Christmas episode. I personally find the whole list making thing a little objectionable. I think it's a fun exercise, but I think the sort of the debate that gets sparked off the back of it tends to be annoying and intense, in that, like, well, how could you put that number 4 instead of number 3? That should have been higher. And it's like, when actually movies in themselves are a form of art, and art is totally subjective.
Also, I'm subjective because if you'd asked me yesterday, I probably would have had a different list. I'm very fickle.
That's the thing. And if you asked me 10 years ago what my favourite movie was, it might be different than it is now. So
anyway,
basically, these are the 5 movies that we most enjoyed personally this year. And I'm not saying that they're the best movies, because best is totally irrational thing to say.
And one other thing, we're in Ireland, so we actually did this episode in Ireland last year as well, in Bray, in Wicklow, and this year
we're in Cork.
Where we're both from, and we are walking around and it's a dry, sunny day.
It's a glorious day. And we are baby free as well. It's just you and me.
The joys of being in Ireland, having family around to help you with babysitting. But anyway, we digress. Into our top 5.
Go, you go first. Go fast, come on, quick.
My 5th, some of these will be quick because we've already done reviews on them. Let me find my list, because I messed up my TV list. I'm not messing up my film one.
Quick, come on.
Quick. I can't find it now. I'm panicking.
Oh,
here we go.
Dead air.
So my number 5 movie of the year.
Yeah.
And I never thought I'd say this, but I have a superhero movie in as my 5th movie of the year.
Dear Lord. Is it Spider-Man?
Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Wow.
Which we literally just reviewed, so I'm not going to go on about it again. We did a very long and excited review about this movie. If you haven't seen it already, and if, like me, you don't particularly like superhero movies, but if, like me, you are a human who lives in the Western world and who's heard of Spider-Man, you'll enjoy this movie. It's a fantastic cartoon.
And it's in cinemas now.
It's in
Go
cinemas
support
now.
it.
It's a fantastic cartoon. It's beautifully animated. I loved every bit of it, particularly from Miles as the lead, the new Spider-Man, to old Peter Parker as his begrudging mentor. And honestly, this movie just left me really happy, and I walked out of the cinema with a big smile on my face, which is what I usually want from a film. Dave,
that was quick.
Yeah. We
okay.
just reviewed it.
My number.
So when you inevitably have it as your number one, don't go on for too long.
What? Am I that predictable?
Maybe, we'll see.
My number 5 of the year is also an animated movie, but it's not that one. It's Coco. It was Pixar's movie this year, Disney and Pixar. Lovely movie, which we also reviewed back in February, about set in Mexico during the Day of the Dead festival. Young boy.
Not called Coco.
Not called Coco.
It's called Miguel.
Visits the afterlife.
I think he's called Miguel, is he?
I don't remember. I think.
But his name's not Coco.
That sounds like you plucked the most cliched Mexican name. I think it might have been. Basically, I thought this was a lovely bit of work. It's not probably not my favourite Pixar movie. Not my favourite animated movie of the year.
Oh, really? Did Spider-Man be somewhere on your list?
But it was very. First of all, it's politically important for showing a culture that we don't often see on the.
Politically important. It's
screen.
Important in general.
Culturally important.
Culturally important.
To see more diverse cultures represented on screen. It's a lovely story. It's the music in this movie is beautiful. We had the soundtrack basically on loop throughout the year. In fact, Spotify does that end of the year thing where it looks at what you played most, and my top 5 songs were all like lullabies for babies. And then after that was
Un Poco Loco.
Un Poco Loco.
We listen to Un Poco a lot. Un Poco Loco.
But really, I mean, the main song is Remember Me, and it's the use of that throughout this movie, and you hear it in various forms, is just devastating. And I've watched this movie again since, and it absolutely reduced me to floods of tears both times. So it's a beautiful, lovely visual animated movie. And very touching, so give it a look if you haven't seen it. Also, quick check-in, we should have said at the top of the show, we won't spoil any of these movies. There's no spoilers, but we won't spoil anything beyond the basic plot details of any of these movies we talk about.
Yeah, like nothing you wouldn't see in the trailer.
No. Cathy, what's your number 4?
Right, my number 4.
We're making great time. My
number 4 is a movie, again, I reviewed on the podcast, Dave hasn't, because he didn't see it. And it was a movie that filled me with joy again, and I left the cinema with a huge smile on my face, and that movie was Mamma Mia! Here We Go Again, which is a fantastic title to the sequel. And I went to see it with my sister Jackie, who I love going to see movies with, and we just had the best time. I would say, it was like completely joyous. It had an amazing cast, with a star turn by Lily James, who is an actress I had seen in a couple of things, but never really noticed. Sorry, we're crossing a busy road here. Until this, and oh my god, she just lights up the screen. I mean, she's incredible. It's such a fun movie, and I know everyone who saw it absolutely loved it. It was fun, funny, touching. It's everything I wanted from a cinema trip, because I just love musicals. And there is another musical I saw this year called A Star Is Born that I absolutely loved as well. But this just had, this is ABBA, right? So nothing can beat ABBA. And then Cher shows up and sings Fernando, which is the single best cinematic moment of the year for me.
You've been dying to do your Cher impression.
I've been doing a Cher impression a lot.
Go on, get it out of your system.
No, I don't think... I have a sore throat, so I can't sing very well at the moment.
Cathy was annoying me with her Cher impression for weeks.
I'm tempted to do it, but I'm not going to do it. And anyway, I loved it, and I think everyone who didn't see it should watch it, because do you know what, it's such a fun movie, and it will just leave a smile on your face, and that's lovely.
I want to see it. I enjoyed the first one. It's just like total fluff.
The second one's better than the first one, though, which is very unusual for a sequel. Yeah, much better.
Alright, you done?
I'm done.
My 4th favourite movie of the year was Mission Impossible Fallout.
Which we've also reviewed on the podcast.
Yeah, go back and check that out. I love this franchise so much because the action scenes in these movies get progressively more insane. Partly due to the fact that Tom Cruise sort of seems to try and outdo himself every time, and famously,
like he's crazy. Basically,
he's crazy, and he's doing a lot of this stuff himself. So in this movie, he did like 140 halo dives, which is one of the most like dangerous skydives you could do. He did 140 of those to piece together one sequence. I don't think there was anything quite as crazy as the him scaling up the Burj Khalifa in this movie, but just the fight scenes in this are so well choreographed. There's a brilliant fight scene in a toilet which really stands out in my mind. These are really fun movies. I love all the characters. I will say the plot of this one was a bit like nonsensical and unintelligible.
I mean, I loved the movie at the time. I couldn't tell you what it was about now.
But actually, it was interesting. I would recommend everybody go and listen to Chris Hewitt's interview with director
that was amazing.
Christopher McQuarrie, which is in 2 parts. It's like something like 4 hours long, and famously he did another one for Rogue Nation with him.
And it was on the Empire podcast.
And Chris Hewitt, former guest of ours, who you'll be hearing his best and worst movie of the year shortly. But that's a cracking interview. That is just this is just exceptional. Christopher McQuarrie is a fascinating man. But what he revealed in that was that they basically had a skeleton of a plot, and the story was malleable and basically shifted based on whatever they wanted to do. So
whatever stunts Tom Cruise wanted to perform.
Start with, I want to do a dive, and then they wanted to do the helicopter stuff, and then they kind of just worked backwards from there and just connected some dots. So that's kind of why the plot doesn't really matter as such.
But the plot during the movie works. It's not a movie that you're sitting there going, the plot's terrible. It's just not memorable.
No, but as soon as you start, I remember afterwards trying to if you actually think about it for a minute, a lot of doesn't really add up. But anyway. Sensational action scenes. Tom Cruise was actually hanging off a helicopter, and it's just beautifully put together. Christopher McQuarrie can really display an action scene, and it's like absolutely thrilling. It's fun. For me, I mean, these movies are the pinnacle of action right now. And if you haven't seen this, go check it out.
Just go and watch it for fun is all I would say.
So much fun.
So much fun. Okay, so my number 3 of the year is a movie we didn't do a review of on this podcast, and it's one that I watched on Netflix, and it is called Private Life, which honestly I hadn't heard of at all, and then I just randomly read a review on it somewhere and was home alone one evening and decided to watch it, and I loved it. And this is the kind of movie that when I watched it I loved it, but it resonated with me for a while after. So it's probably good we didn't do an initial podcast on it, because it may have had to end up in my second chance one. Not that I would have ever given it a bad review, but more that it really stuck with me afterwards. And so it was written and directed by Tamara Jenkins, who wrote and directed The Savages, which was out about 10 years ago.
That's a great movie.
Yeah, and I haven't seen that, and now I want to see it, and I know that it was hugely critically acclaimed.
Philip Seymour Hoffman and Laura Linney playing siblings, I think.
Yes, that was it.
Yeah.
And then it stars Catherine Hahn, who I have only ever seen in bad comedies is the only way I can describe it. What springs to mind is actually the movie I watched for our Christmas episode last year with Scummy Mummies, which was terrible. Bad Moms Christmas. She's in that, and this movie is her in a really, serious role, and she just brings so much to it. And kind of briefly what the movie's about, and I won't go into it because it's probably not one people have seen trailers for, and I don't want to spoil anything, but it's about so Catherine Hahn and her husband is played by Paul Giamatti, and I was really pleased to see him in this role as well, because it reminded me that actually as an actor I used to love him, and because I've seen him in a lot of things lately, and what springs to mind is Billions. Which is a show I've watched a lot of, where he's just
such a stupid
he's
show.
Just posturing and shouting and being really disgusting, and to me that's not acting, he's just being really gross in that show. And this brings back the fact that he's a really sensitive and endearing actor, and they play a couple who are in their late 40s, left it very late in life to try and conceive, and it just follows their journey as they try and get pregnant basically. And I think it's a movie that could be easily dismissed on first look at this summary and say, oh wow, first world problems, white couple in their 40s trying to conceive. They put it off because of career reasons, whatever. And that was kind of my initial feeling. But then as you watch, feels really personal, and it feels like it was written by somebody who, whether or not she went through it, has a very deep understanding of that process. In particular, like the emotional and financial implications of IVF and the complexity of the adoption process, which I've heard a lot from other people, and it sounds so hard. Like it's such a sad thing about our world that there's so many people in the world who want to adopt, and there's so many kids who need parents, and somehow like it's just really difficult to marry the two up. But the movie isn't actually downbeat, even though the way I'm describing it sounds. It's a really beautiful movie. Like Dave, you'd love it. But it has an ending that just blew me away, and that doesn't often happen. And it's an ending that ends in like a lot of silence, which is in a movie where people talk a lot. And the ending, I just watched the ending as it rolled over the credits and just thought, wow, this is amazing and this is really unique, and I loved it. So yeah, that's my number 3 of the year.
Great.
Called Private Life, and it's on Netflix.
My number 3 of the year is also one that you didn't see. It's called A Quiet Place. This is the...
Oh, I'm so annoyed I missed that one, because I know I'd love it, but...
And we did, I did do an episode on this with Lee and Andy from the What's the Point Paranormal podcast. You'd love this movie. It's a it's a horror movie. If anyone who doesn't know, it's instantly lands you in a world where it's sort of, I would say, post-apocalyptic type world where most of humanity has been wiped out by monsters who react only to sound, and so the sort of a simple premise, which is don't make any noises, or you can basically make very, you make very quiet noises. yeah.
I actually didn't even listen to your review of this because I don't want any of it spoiled for me. So keep it short. This
is such a from the very beginning. This is confident filmmaking, directed by Jonathan Krasinski. Most famous for playing Jim from the US Office, married to Emily Blunt in real life, and they play on-screen husband and wife here. So you basically stay with this family. It's a husband, wife, and a few kids, and you're there's no origin tale here, which I like. You're just thrown into this is what their lives are like, living in essentially complete silence. Communicating through sign language, but it's all about the little details in this which I enjoyed. Like nobody wears shoes. Everyone's always barefoot. They've got a series of they use lights very cleverly. So if there's an emergency and they need to warn everybody that the monsters are nearby, you wouldn't do a siren or a call or anything. They've got a series of red lights hooked up, and you flick the red lights on.
So Dave, what you're saying is if someone wants a more detailed review of this, they can go back and find your review from earlier this year.
Stop trying to shut me up. You just went on for ages about your Netflix
we haven't
movie.
reviewed that already. You've already reviewed A Quiet Place.
Yeah, but come on, let me just gush about this movie
for a little bit. And I
literally
just said I hadn't listened to your original review because I don't want spoilers.
Oh, is that you're afraid that I'm spoiling it for you?
Yeah, I don't want to know anything.
Okay, fine. Anyway, I'll speak more generally. It's it's an excellent. It's a very tense movie. It's a great horror movie. It doesn't pander to its audience. It doesn't deliver a whole lot of exposition, except for one or two slightly clunky moments, which let it down. But it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. Emily Blunt's obviously an amazing actress, and she has some moments in this where, if you imagine an intense moment where all you want to do is scream and you can't, it's absolutely terrifying. But a brilliant cinematic experience to have as well, because you're in a cinema with a load of people who generally are a little, people move around or have popcorn, so it's it really put this sort of cinema etiquette to the test.
Okay.
But
and
yeah,
you're really putting me to the test here.
All right, you just should watch it, because I want to watch it again.
Thank you. Right. My number 2 of the year is a movie that we've already reviewed. So you can go back and listen to the full review. It's also one David is number 5 of the year. It is Coco.
Lovely.
I love this movie, and actually I loved every part of it, but I also loved, we had a really amazing experience. It was one of our, I think it might have been the first trip or the second trip that we went as a family to the cinema this year, because earlier this year when Oscar was little, him and I used to go to parent baby screenings every week, every Tuesday morning, that I loved. and Dave took a couple of half days from work, and he came for this one to see Coco, and the three of us just had a lovely time, and Oscar loved the music. So obviously it was a very special day for me, but also I just loved the movie. It's such a beautiful story. It's all about music, and the importance of family is really what it comes down to, and the importance of culture. It's a wonderful central character. We mentioned the little boy is just so fantastic.
Whose name we can't remember.
I think it's Miguel.
Maybe it is Miguel.
Should have done some work on this. And he just, all he wants to do is play music, and that's just such a lovely thing. And it's interesting, Dave, what you said, like, you know, how important it is to represent other cultures. And this movie was such a smash hit in Mexico. It made so much money. Because it is a representation of this huge culture, and not just Mexico, but all Spanish language speaking countries. You know, it was huge. And particularly the narrative of Mexico in the press at the moment is so horrible. What's happening between Mexico and the United States, and the horrible things, you know, that are being said about Mexican people. And this movie is so celebratory of that culture. But again, that's not the reason I love it. The reason I love it is just that it's a wonderful film, and it just filled me with joy, and the music was really spectacular. Like, it's fantastically written music. So much so that I mentioned we loved Un Poco Loco, and earlier this year with Oscar, we used to be able to hold him up and his little feet would dance kind of against his it wasn't of his own volition, they would just move, and we played Un Poco Loco and he was dancing to it. We made a little video that I sent to the director, who responded very kindly that he really enjoyed it, and that was like made my week. So yeah, and look, ultimately what I just loved about this movie at the core was the relationship that the little boy had with his grandmother and with his like great grandfather, because that's a really special relationship. I think that if someone's lucky enough to know their grandparents, it can be a really wonderful thing, and this movie really captured that, which I loved. Right, drum roll, Dave. Either Spider-Man's your number one, or we're divorcing and I don't know you at all.
That was a number 2 first.
That was number 2.
That was your number 2.
Oh shit, okay, sorry.
You can't do that, how to do this at all. If anyone hasn't listened to our best TV of the year yet, Cathy decided to accidentally do a top 6 because she's unable to count properly. Even though she specifically announced her number 1 show, which then she realised was her number 2 show. So my number 2 of the year is Avengers Infinity War.
Yes, I knew Spider-Man was your number 1.
Well, excuse me, you don't know that.
Okay,
for a
sorry.
fact. Leave some suspense for the audience.
Oh, really? You enjoyed Avengers, did you?
I really did. Again, you
what
can.
What about Black Panther? I thought that might have been in there.
Maybe it's my number 1.
Oh, okay.
Bit of suspense.
Ooh.
So
the suspense is killing me.
So for anybody who does want to listen to us talk at length about Avengers Infinity War, we went to see it with Scroobius Pip earlier in the year and had a lot of fun.
Yeah, I have to say, even I enjoyed it.
I'm not sure how much more can be said about this movie, because it's probably one of the biggest talking points of the year.
Well, it's the biggest or second biggest box office, isn't it? It's between this and Black Panther of the year. But really, I think I'm surprised this is in your list, because to me it's just, I've completely forgotten the movie. It was such like popcorn fluff.
I mean, look, it is popcorn fluff essentially, and this is why I think I need to stress at the beginning. It's not one of the best films ever made. It really has nothing to say. It's just a fun supercorn. It's a superhero popcorn flick, which I've now coined supercorn.
To be fair, it is the culmination of every movie you love ever.
Well, that's it. I'm obsessed with this stuff. For anyone who hasn't heard my Marvel movie marathon from ages ago, I watched them, well, all of the ones that were available back to back over a weekend, and went slowly nuts. But I love this stuff, and this is 10 years in the making. It's an incredible achievement, really, that they managed to have the sort of patience and dedication to slowly spin this out over a long time. We got a lot of standalone movies, and we've had 2 sort of group Avengers movies before this. But the scale of the amount of characters that they got into this is quite something, and the fact that it wasn't a complete mess, I think, is the most surprising thing.
Oh wow, congratulations that your movie isn't a complete
mess. No, but
I
mean, going into this, I thought, how is this even possible? Because Avengers Age of Ultron was just okay, and we've seen movies before that just absolutely fall over when there's too many characters, such as Spider-Man 3, which had too many villains.
Yeah, but Spider-Man 3 was also shit.
But
that's not the only reason.
No, but partly it was because there are too many villains. There's 3 villains in that. But actually, hang on, that's the 3 villains. This has dozens of characters.
But this also had the Wakanda setting, which is what made Black Panther so good, and I think that helped elevate this movie. Like, I think this movie wouldn't be as good as it was if it hadn't had Black Panther right before it.
No, it certainly helped.
Yeah.
But then you could argue the same about any of the previous movies, because we've all had... I mean, it obviously helps when all the audience already has relationships with all these characters, and it's fun to see them interact. But I think the other big surprise for me was not only that they managed to... credit to the Russo brothers for actually pulling off this balancing act, but that Thanos was a huge surprise. Really, it's his movie. He turned out to be somebody who, going into the movie, I thought was one of the most boring on-screen presences we'd ever seen. He hadn't really done anything. I assumed he was going to be another one-note CG blob Steppenwolf type.
Yeah, they're
type
always
thing.
the Achilles heel of these movies, the villains.
Yeah.
Until Michael B. Jordan in Black Panther.
Michael B. Jordan was great, but he was a real surprise, because it's his story and his journey as such, and you can look at it that way. He's the protagonist. They managed to flesh him out and humanize him in really interesting ways, to the point where, like, he has a point of view and a cause that you kind of makes sense on paper. Obviously, he's kind of lost the plot. But for me, him and as Josh Brolin playing him was the best thing about this movie. Totally unexpected. And I've seen it several times since. But obviously the action's amazing. I love watching this stuff. It's just great popcorn movie making. Absolutely loved it. I'll stop gushing.
Yeah, refer to our review from earlier this year.
And I can't wait for Endgame, which I haven't watched the trailer for, because I'm so excited that I don't want to know anything going into this. Not a single bit.
Okay, spoiler, there's Avengers in it, right? Okay, so my number one of the year is Widows, which again we watched very recently, and it's not just because it was a recent viewing. It's like generally a lot of the really good movies get kept for this part of the year, because of award season. So this is a fantastic movie that was directed by Steve McQueen, and like I waxed lyrical about it on our podcast. We both liked it, but I liked it a lot more than Dave did. I love the story. Like, it's a heist thriller with really complex characters, loads of politics in this. There's loads on like America today around like politics and race and class and all of that stuff, which makes a really rich background to the movie. But ultimately for me it was about Viola Davis and those female characters and what they were doing, which was actually, albeit in a grim setting, like fun. Like, it's a fun fantasy to imagine that you and like a group of women you've never met before will suddenly like pull off a heist. So I was actually...
Do you fantasize about that?
No, but I just think like that's cool. Like, that's a really cool thing. And it's a funny thing. It's kind of the other side of the coin of Ocean's 8, which I had watched and enjoyed this year, but honestly it knocks Ocean's 8 out of the park.
Interesting that they were released the same year.
It is interesting, and honestly I was at the edge of my seat with this movie and really didn't want it to end. And I'm generally like want movies to be quite short, but I could have watched this movie and been in that world all day. I loved every bit of it. I loved all the casting. We did mention there was a particularly gross kiss at the start of this movie between Liam Neeson and Viola Davis that the whole cinema squirmed and made horrible noises about when it came on. And yeah, I just loved it. I love every part of it. And to me, what this movie shows is that when you put someone, behind the screen who is really interested in telling like a genuinely new story, what this involved in this instance is a complete mix of race and a complete mix of gender. And it just felt rooted in reality, that I'm watching a movie with people who just aren't all men and they're not all white and they're complex. And you've got people on different ends of the spectrum, from like, you've got really wealthy people like Colin Farrell, and then you've got, I've forgotten her name, but the amazing character who played the babysitter, who we think is like rivaling Tom Cruise now in terms of running. She was just like an amazing action star. I can't remember her name, but there was just everything about this film was diverse. From the gender to the races to the classes to the baddies and the goodies, but ultimately the reason I loved it so much, all of that is a rich background, but what I loved the most is I just loved the story and it completely gripped me.
Great. Okay.
And I'm really happy it came out this year.
So my number one of the year is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Knew it.
This movie
we just did a review on.
Yeah, so I'll try not to repeat myself, because we did wax lyrical about this for quite a while. But for me, okay, and it's been a few weeks now since we've seen it, and basically every day since I've seen that movie, I have thought about it.
Every day since you've seen that movie.
Every day. I've been like, I look at I go on YouTube a lot, and I've looked at the clips of it so many times in the trailer that my YouTube newsfeed now, the algorithm has just decided that I only want to see Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse clips,
which is
so
true.
It's all I see. But I'm obsessed. I got obsessed with the soundtrack to this, which I listen to on repeat at work. I replay the movie in my head, which I haven't done since I was a kid. So when you're a kid and you love a movie so much, but you
can't see
it
every
when you're
day.
young. You don't see it for a long time. It comes out on VHS, but I mean, when we were really young, VHSs weren't even really readily available to buy. You'd have to rent them, and I used to rent movies over and over again to try and experience them. But this movie, I've been reliving over in my head. I haven't had such an experience in the cinema like this in so long, where I just felt like a kid. I was just filled with joy throughout this. I was completely absorbed in the world, and I was happy. I was so happy. I just forgot about all the issues with the world outside. I was absorbed into this story. I was just stunned by the visual style of this. Felt like a huge transition, a leap forward. I've never seen anything like this. It looked like a comic book had come to life. We didn't really talk enough in our review about the lovely little details that they took from comic books. You know, did you notice when they zoomed in on people, you would see the dots that used to be present on an old comic book in the cool printing that doesn't even exist anymore.
I think that's one of the reasons as well. We got confused and thought for a minute that we should have had 3D glasses on.
Well, specifically, a lot of people have pointed that out, that I think everyone thought they needed 3D glasses because they decided, they made all these choices. They're like the background and the foreground are going to be in different shades, so they blurred it out, which is something that is similar to how a movie looks. A 3D movie looks without the glasses.
But after about 5 minutes we adjusted. It was just initially.
But also the frame rate isn't like 100%. Like there's a little bit of stuttering, which also makes it, but somehow just makes it look even cooler. They blend text speech bubbles and text graphics. This movie is in love with comic books and its source material, and it celebrates all that. And I just love this movie so much. Not only is this my favourite movie of the year, it's my favourite movie in so many years. I haven't bought a Blu-ray since, I don't know, maybe...
Remember you bought all the Jurassic World ones, the Jurassic Park movies?
But that's like when we were living in Australia, so that's like maybe 5 years ago. Was the last time I bought a Blu-ray, because everything's streamed now, it's so easy. But I'm buying this Blu-ray the second it comes out. I want to own this, I want to cherish it. I'm absolutely obsessed with this movie. I'm going to try and go as many times as I can again in the cinema. I cannot stress enough, like Cathy said, if you look at this and think, oh, another Spider-Man movie or whatever, this thing's been played to death, you haven't seen anything like this. This is fresh and original and bold and interesting. And at the bottom of all that, once you get past all the style and invention, there's just a great story.
Yeah, there's a great central character, Miles. Miles
is a lovely character, and the movie's been populated with wonderful supporting characters.
And anyone can wear the mask.
It's got a lovely fundamental message that basically Stan Lee would have loved. I just love this, and so even the other day I'm trying to convince people to see this. I was saying to my sister and her husband, we were around the telly and an ad came on, and they were just like rolling their eyes, and I was like, no, that's my favourite movie of the year.
Well, that's when I went to see it, because originally when we heard another Spider-Man movie was coming out, I had rolled my eyes and said, good luck to you, go without me. And then, like, slowly but surely, all these film critics and people whose taste I respect started saying, no, this is one of the best movies of the year. So I was like, okay, I'll go along. And I was like, oh, this is just a cynical cash-in. And I came out loving it and, like, glowingly reviewing it. So.
And that's what I'm doing right now for the last time, because I'll stop harping on about this. If you do respect our opinions and you like what we like, please give this movie a chance. If you're even halfway wavering about it, go support it. I think it's already got confirmed sequels and all that, which I'm excited to spend more time in this Spider-Verse. But I just love this to death, and it made me happy and excited about cinema again, because for the most part it's just, I think mainstream cinema and blockbuster movies have become very repetitive and a load of shite.
Really? I mean, we only watched Avengers 20 this year. I wouldn't have thought it was any repetition in the cinema. But thank you, Dave, for that. And if anyone wants to hear Dave glowing even more about that movie, you can listen to our review from a few weeks ago. But now we are going to take a break so that you can hear some of the best and worst movies of guests of podcasts past and guests of podcasts yet to come.
Hi everybody, Linda here, Cathy's mom. And I'm going to skip right past all those big Hollywood movies that are probably going to make the Oscars. And I'm going to talk about, I think, my favourite movie of the year was a little independent movie called Love After Love, which starred Andy McDowell and Chris O'Dowd, both doing amazing performances. And it follows a family as they come to terms with loss, with grief, with family crisis and with family breakdown. And it's not a movie that tries to fix anything or wrap anything up in happy endings. And it did make a big impression, and I think it's worth checking out. Worst movie of the year for me was undoubtedly The Fantastic Beasts. I thought it just disappointed for itself and also kind of tarnished the whole happy Harry Potter genre for me. So definitely one to be avoided. So happy New Year, everybody, and see you all in 2019.
My name is Scroobius Pip, and I'm the host of the Distraction Pieces podcast and sometimes guest on the cinema. And my film of the year, I've struggled with massively. Dark River blew me away. Journeyman. There's too many to choose from, but what I've settled on is The Square, because there's two particular performances in that, two particular scenes that are two of the best bits of acting and most emotionally evocative bits of acting I've ever seen. One in humour and one in just drama and amazement. It's tough on my worst film of the year because genuinely I've enjoyed so much. I enjoyed Solo, which everyone seemed to hate, but a film I saw at the beginning of the year, which was technically out last year, but it came out after Christmas, so that barely even counts, but everyone loved it and I didn't really get it, is The Greatest Showman. I felt like it was a film pulling up a chair and sitting on it backwards like a cool teacher trying to be hip and appeal to the kids, and it didn't click for me. Anyway, that's my choices.
Hi Dave and Cathy, Chris Hewitt here from the Empire Podcast. It's far too wet and cold to walk around today, so I'm sitting in a chair instead. Sorry, I've let you guys down. I've let the cinema down. Anyway, while I realise this makes me a total raging cliche, what with my seemingly unconditional love of all things Marvel, my favourite film this year was Avengers Infinity War. Sorry, but it was. There are 14,604 timelines in which this movie turned out to be an absolute mess, as it should have been with that many characters and storylines from the previous 18 MCU movies all crashing together. But I'm thankful that we live in the one timeline where it works.
Finding high-quality mental health care can be daunting and exhausting. That's why Cerebral offers convenient access to online mental health services, including therapy and medication management. Cerebral's diverse clinician team can help with anxiety, depression, insomnia, stress, grief, big life changes, and more. You can schedule and communicate with your care team through Cerebral's mobile app and attend your sessions from the comfort of your own home. Get started with or without insurance. Plus, you can now use FSA or HSA. Start your first month for 50% off at Cerebral.com/ACAST.
Worked. Seriously, this thing is a towering achievement. It is funny, thrilling, surprisingly moving. It's got great action. It manages to give every single major character, all 728 of them, something to do. It delivers an all-timer of a villain in Thanos. And the ending is up there with The Empire Strikes Back for me. And I cannot wait to see how it all concludes in Avengers Endgame. And for my least favourite movie of the year, I'm going to go with Luca Guadagnino's Suspiria, which is an overlong, pretentious hodgepodge of a film that forgets the crucial element of a horror film, to be scary. In fact, it forgot to be anything but utterly tedious with its off Broadway play of an ending. No film this year made me roll my eyes or check my watch as often. Good Tom York score, though. I will give it that. But that's it for me. Merry Christmas to you guys. Happy New Year. And here's to many more Cinemiles in 2019.
Hello, the Cinemile. It's Helen O'Hara here from the Empire Podcast. My film of the year, boringly, was probably Avengers Infinity War. To anyone who listens to Empire, you'll know that I'm a sucker for an Avengers movie, and especially one where Captain America has a beard that good. Worst film of the year is a bit harder. I think it's actually been a really, really good year for cinema, and the films I've seen already from 2019 have been great. I guess the biggest maybe disappointment for me was Red Sparrow, which I thought, given the cast and the people behind it, was blah. So, yeah, here's to a brilliant 2019 and Merry Christmas.
Right, we're back. It's us again. You're going to now hear our honourable mentions, the movies that we love but didn't make our top 5 of the year. Cathy, shoot.
Okay, so another one that stuck with me a lot after I watched it, and I enjoyed at the time too, I gave it a good review, was Love, Simon. Kind of for 2 reasons. One is I love teen movies, and I thought they did a really good job of this. Teen movies aren't really in the cinemas anymore. For whatever reason, they're kind of in the Netflix world. So I was really pleased to see a teen movie in the cinema making loads of money. And secondly, it was the first ever mainstream release movie, teen movie with a gay protagonist. And it's all about this guy Simon who's trying to come out, and it just works really well. It's a really sweet, endearing rom-com. Second is Mission Impossible Fallout. I loved it. It was awesome. Black Panther, which I didn't do a review of on the podcast, I went to see separately. And honestly, I think it's the best of all those movies because it felt different. Those movies are so samey. And this one, the world of Wakanda and how cool and different Wakanda was, I loved it. Creed 2, again, we just did a massive review on it, but we're big Rocky fans, and I thought Creed 2 did a really good job.
We watched some of Rocky 4 last night. It was really fun. RTE.
3 Billboards, which we reviewed very early this year, but I thought was, I had some issues with it, but I thought, it was a brilliant achievement. And First Man, which is the movie that was directed by, what's his name? Damien Chazelle, who also made La La Land. I really enjoyed that movie.
That's your list?
Yeah, that's my list.
Oh, I've got way more than you.
Well,
all right, I'll rattle through these.
Rattle through it then.
All right.
We're doing all of this during a baby's
on.
nap hour, which is why we're trying to be quick.
All right, First Man. Agreed. That was a real surprise for me because I don't like biopics. Wasn't interested in Neil Armstrong's story. You know how it ends.
Yeah.
But it was
really worked.
Just for me, again, the star of this is Damien Chazelle as a sort of a leader, and the sort of the vision and the audio of this in particular. The some of the space scenes are so well put together, so tense. Loved it. Creed 2 is a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. Not quite as good as the first, but it's as a direct sequel to Rocky 4, which I never thought would happen. As in Rocky 5 not being a direct sequel to Rocky 4 in many ways. This is just a lot of fun. I love these movies. Black Panther, agree with everything you said. I thought it was just really fresh and cool and fun, and it felt like
and again, Michael B. Jordan knocking it out of the park.
Michael B. Jordan is amazing in both of those movies that I just mentioned. Annihilation is a movie. What did you quite enjoyed it at the time?
Did I? Oh,
clearly you don't remember.
I think I didn't like it. I can't really remember.
So this is the Alex Garland sci-fi movie that was released on Netflix starring Natalie Portman. I think, to be fair, I think we were a little bit cold by the end of it. It didn't quite land for me, but I think I really admire this movie in terms of this is very unusual and unique. It certainly doesn't go, it's not conventional, and I think that's part of the reason why it didn't get a cinematic release is because
the studio
it's not very audience friendly, and it's not very studio friendly, but it's just cool and weird and interesting. The Post is Steven Spielberg's movie at the beginning of the year. I loved, because I love movies about journalists, and this is just classic sort of, there's nothing really, this feels like really old school filmmaking and storytelling, but it's just fun. Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep, I just love all that stuff of ethic debates and all that kind of stuff. 3 Billboards you've already talked about, but I thought it was a lot of fun.
You thought 3 Billboards was a lot of fun?
Yeah, I mean, it was fun. Yeah, it's fun to watch. I mean, obviously it's got quite very dark subject matter, but there's it's quite funny, and there's some cracking black comedy and brilliant sharp dialogue in that movie, and brilliant performances. Hereditary is a brilliant horror movie that we saw with our friend Alex earlier in the year. Check out our review of that. I put Peter Rabbit on here.
What?
Which we saw earlier in the year, and
That was terrible.
no, it was not. I actually quite enjoyed it. I thought it was quite charming. If you take aside the quite annoying James Corden voice acting, and some of the bunny stuff was quite annoying, but it's a lovely sort of charming performance by Donald Gleeson in here. I thought it was a really fun kids movie.
I think your list is too long and you're like dredging up Peter Rabbit.
I'm nearly done. Game Night is a movie that we didn't see in the cinema or review, but we caught on video on demand, and was like surprisingly good.
It was funny, yeah.
Most American comedies in the past few years have gone just total dire, and most of the cast in this are responsible for all those dire movies.
Rachel McAdams is not.
No, to be fair, but Jason Bateman is no longer a sign of quality, unfortunately. But he, this is a lot of fun, really, really fun. Kyle Chandler's in here.
It's funny and it's short, so it's a good movie.
Definitely check it out.
Okay.
Crazy Rich Asians was quite a surprise for me.
Yeah, I meant to put that in this list.
You didn't quite enjoy it as much as I did, I don't think.
But what I loved was that it was, a big budget rom-com back in the cinema, because rom-com, like teen movies, are just dying a death and never in the cinemas anymore.
And it's like, I just
fun.
really thought it was like nothing special as such for me, but it was like just really entertaining stuff. I really enjoyed The Shape of Water. I know you
Dave,
really
now
didn't.
you're just recapping every movie of the year that we saw.
No, these are my honourable mentions.
Okay.
I thought it was great. I thought Shape of Water was really great, and I didn't even see it in the language that it was intended to be seen
that
in.
was our special 100th episode edition for anyone who didn't listen. We did a big review on
I've only
The
got
Shape
2
of Water.
left. Calm down.
Okay.
Incredibles 2, not the best Pixar movie of the year for me, but a very confident sequel. Picks up right where the other one left off, and just really entertaining sort of superhero stuff. Doesn't feel as sort of fresh as the first one did, but like a lot of fun. And the sequence with Jack and the raccoon is one of the best scenes in cinema this year. Lastly, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, the Coen Brothers movie on Netflix, I thought was really special and different, and definitely worth a watch. Particularly the Tom Waits story has really stuck with me.
Right.
And that's done. That's me. So
Excellent.
what, Cathy, your second...
Please don't tell me all your lists are that long. Second Chance, the new category in the Cinema Best of the Year. My second chance movie is The Greatest Showman. Primarily because when I reviewed it, and Dave didn't see it, but when I reviewed it...
I really want to see this.
I mainly said, the movie's grand, but the songs are rubbish and I'll never sing them again. I take that back, because I have sung the songs Greatest Showman every day since I went to see it.
You were, for weeks afterwards, you were singing this up, to the point where I started singing them and I hadn't even seen the movie. You got them stuck in my head.
And I
just
got the
for
most
me
annoying one stuck in my head, which is never enough, never, never. I can't stop singing that effing song. So anyway, and it was really interesting. I saw an interview with Hugh Jackman where he said, because this was his big passion project that he worked on for 8 years, and the guys who wrote the music ended up writing in the music for La La Land and winning an Oscar, but they were doing this before that. And he said their criteria when they got people to listen to songs, they said, don't tell us straight away if you like the song, come back tomorrow and tell me if you're still singing them. And that's exactly what happened to me with this movie. I really no time for the songs, and the next day therefore couldn't stop singing. So second chance goes to Greatest Showman. Dave?
I thought we had a few of these. No, I've got 3.
Right, well then you better rush through them.
Okay, so my first second chance
Your
is...
first second chance? Are you joking me?
I've got 3.
Baby's going to wake from his nap and we won't be there.
So
he's not alone, by the way. He's with the grandparents.
I put Widows down. Not that I gave it a bad review, because in general I think it is a great movie. It didn't really connect with me as a character piece, or really in many ways as a heist movie. I don't think it's a very good heist movie. I think it's got a lot of problems.
So you wanted to trash it again in your second
No,
chance.
I'm not going to trash it. I'm going to call out again the director Steve McQueen, because what stuck with me a long time after this movie, and the reason I'm bringing it up in my second chance, is that there are a few shots in this movie which are just stunning and the best of the year. There is, without talking about specifics, there's a car, there's one in particular where the camera is placed on Colin Farrell's car and we go on a little car journey that is instantly jarring and interesting, and then by the end of it you have this sort of dawning realization as to what he's just done, and it's just masterful. And anything to do with cars in this movie, with the action scenes with cars, it's just excellent. Second one is Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, which we did review, And I think we kind of gave it a little bit of a positive review, like we had a little bit of fun, it was fine. But I'm going to do a second chance on it in that it should have got a worse review, because that movie left me almost instantly, and looking back at it, it just seemed like a total pointless exercise, like a complete waste of time and money and resources. And
it's one of those movies we enjoyed because we were in a good mood and having fun, and we had a day out with it. I think
it's the definition of like
fluff,
popcorn fluff, but not popcorn fluff, like, because the Avengers Infinity War is popcorn fluff, but that is like quite impressive, and I've gone back to and watched, whereas this is just like, it was fine at the time, and we got a little bit of fun out of it, but my god, what a stupid waste of time.
All I remember is the catwalk show with the dinosaurs being bid on, which was quite fun.
So stupid.
And the baddie being eaten by a dinosaur.
And lastly, Annihilation, which I've already talked about, but I think that does deserve a second chance. It didn't really do anything for me at the time, but it did stick with me afterwards, particularly the sort of bizarre showdown at the end. So it's just excellent stuff.
Okay, great. Now I hope your worst list of the year isn't that long. I have two worst, if you can have that. First is Fantastic Beasts. It's inexcusable that a movie from the pedigree of the Harry Potter world and all the money in the world to throw at it, and, you know, some good cast members and J.K. Rowling behind it, who's a great writer, would be this bad. And now Dave hasn't seen it, but this is a movie that my mother and I went to see, and we both agree it was horrifically bad. So if you want to hear that review, go for it. My second joint worst is Darkest Hour, which again Dave hasn't seen, but I did a review of it with my dad. And this movie went on for what's his name to win the Oscar? Gary Oldman. I mean, come on. All he did was wear a fat suit, posture in a posh accent, and smoke a cigar. It's an absolute joke that he won an Oscar for it. And this movie is actually, honestly, tied up in what I perceive to be a problem in modern day Britain, and we live in England. Is that everyone's just looking back to the past, and everyone's looking back to the great past in England. And actually, England can have an amazing future if everyone looks forward and strives to be an amazing country that's inclusive and celebratory, and not be constantly looking back to, you know, times gone by and glorifying, you know, rich white men doing amazing things, which is what this movie does. And honestly, it leaves me absolutely cold. And the fact that he won the Oscar, I just thought, oh, whatever. There's a million movies he should have won an Oscar for, and this is not one of them. Dave.
Okay, so I did end up putting 5 on this, but I'm only going to really talk about one, and I'm going to rattle off the others. Some of the worst movies that we saw this year. Harry and Meghan's Royal Wedding, unsurprisingly, a Lifetime movie. It's not a good movie, but...
and yet we enjoyed watching it.
The two of us and Cathy's mom watched it. If you want to go listen to that, it was kind of a lot of fun to sort of trash. The Cloverfield Paradox, which was released on Netflix, great series. The Cloverfield films, total letdown this. Tomb Raider, total waste of time. What a pointless exercise. Bright, which actually has a great concept on paper, the Will Smith one.
Another Netflix,
which we also reviewed, but Jesus, that was dire stuff.
On an aside, it's been a really interesting year. Netflix started out with movies like Bright and Cloverfield Paradox this year being, you know, lambasted for how bad they were, and it's ended on Roma, which is everyone's best movie of the year that we haven't seen. So Netflix have done a real number this year, from start to end, in terms of their film commissions.
Yeah. And then lastly, for me, the worst film that I saw this year was Ready Player One, which again I sort of went on.
You went on too much, and you don't need to do it again.
I really had a go at it, and nothing has changed in that time. I'm not a fan of that work. I think Steven Spielberg certainly created some interesting visuals in this, but I think at the core of this movie is just hollow, and it's everything that I hate about fan service and pop culture is present in here. And lastly, I will reiterate, because I think I ended up offending a few of our fans on this. Certainly we had quite a few unsubscriptions after that episode, but I guess they're gone now, so they're not hearing. But for anyone left, if anybody enjoyed that movie, that's great. I'm so happy for you. This isn't, again, these are lists. These movies are subjective, and I'm not telling you that your opinions are wrong, and anyone who says that I'm wrong is wrong, because nobody is right or wrong. I just did not enjoy this movie at all, and it made me really angry.
I mean, you made your point. We definitely got that you didn't like it. Okay, on to guilty pleasures, which I have two of. The first one being Harry and Meghan, A Royal Wedding, the Lifetime movie Dave just mentioned. It was terrible, every part of it was terrible, and yet I laughed my head off, enjoyed every minute of watching it, and enjoyed every minute of podcasting with my mom, which I always do, particularly in this instance because it was just three of us sitting on the couch drinking wine, I think. And secondly, I have to say Mission Impossible Fallout is a guilty pleasure because I shouldn't like these movies.
Why not?
They're just not what I'm about.
Well, you feel guilty for liking a Mission Impossible?
I love them, and yet if I was to, sit down and academically try and write everything that I believe is valuable and important in a movie, not a single one of those things apply to this. So it's it goes against my core values, and yet I love it. So therefore, I think it's a guilty pleasure. Dave, guilty pleasures.
I've got two guilty pleasures this year. The first one is a Netflix movie called The Night Comes For Us, which you haven't seen.
No.
But it's a martial arts action movie, essentially starring... Oh, I've forgotten to write down the... Ito something, I think is his name. He's the star of The Raid, which is the Gareth Evans action movie from a while ago, which is one of the best and one of my favourite action movies of all time, and that dude is amazing. He's in this. It's basically a triad story, crime story. It's not a good movie. Basically, it's not. The story's bad. The acting is atrocious in this. Really bad stuff. But the fight scenes in this are really just intense. The choreography is outstanding, and it's so superbly and disgustingly violent. So if at all you're into just basically the teenager in me resurfaced again, because I used to love watching gory horror and action movies. If you enjoy watching any of that stuff, this movie is definitely worth a watch for the action scenes alone, and just sort of get strung along by the story. The second guilty pleasure for me is 50 Shades Freed, the third 50 Shades movie, which we both saw, which again is an awful movie, but was so fun to watch because it's so outrageously stupid.
Yeah.
And it's a fun movie to hate watch, I would say. Get a group of people around, watch that, have a few drinks and laugh at it because it's so hilariously bad.
Yeah, so bad. Okay, great. Now, are we on to
most disappointing of the year?
So for reasons I said already, Fantastic Beasts, though I had very low hopes for it after the last movie, I certainly did not.
The last movie was good.
Yeah, but the last movie didn't set my world on fire, so
Okay.
I wasn't expecting much from this, particularly with Johnny Depp being in it, which I wasn't keen on. But it was even worse than I thought it would be, way worse than I thought it would be. Secondly, really disappointing for me this year, genuinely devastated at this one, was I Feel Pretty, which is a movie I didn't review with Dave, but with my friend Tessa earlier this year, and written and starring Amy Schumer, who I'm a massive fan of, and I think she's fantastic, and I love her TV show. And this was just a complete dud, and actually did some stuff that I really didn't like around fat shaming and being really negative about women's appearance. So deeply disappointing on that one. And finally Paddington 2, which I saw very early this year, though I believe may have come out last year. I don't know why everyone's raving about it, because I found it a disappointing sequel.
I've seen that on some people's best of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't and now this is not to say I think Fantastic Beasts was a bad movie. I don't think Paddington was a bad movie.
You were just disappointed.
I was disappointed, and often what it is I know it's a good movie. It didn't leave me with that warm fuzzy feeling I had from the first one, and a lot of that is genuinely what mood you're in, what day you go to the cinema, But for me, it didn't have the same magic the first one.
Well, I haven't seen it, and I really want to see it because
and I'll watch it again with you to see. Hopefully, I might like it better the second viewing.
Okay, I've got two most disappointing of the year. First one is Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Oh God, yeah.
Which I've already said about how much I love these Marvel movies, and I thought the first Ant-Man was a lot of fun. And this, while it's not a terrible movie, it's just an absolutely bog average movie. And it's got some fun stuff in here. It's a fun watch, but Jesus, there's nothing to compel you or interest you, or the villains are flat and their motivations are stupid.
The only good thing about this movie, funnily, was the end sequence, and I normally don't stay for them or watch them.
The post-credits sting.
Yeah, it's really good bit. So I think they could have skipped the whole movie and just put that on YouTube.
Not enough Michelle Pfeiffer, who was basically hugely billed in this. just really stupid and looked kind of cheap and crap and didn't have enough invention in it. Because basically, wasn't a fan. Go listen to our review. And secondly, A Simple Favor, which was the Paul, what's his name, movie.
I didn't see it.
Oh my God, I'm blanking.
Paul Feig?
Paul Feig, yeah, the Paul Feig sort of. It was really heavily marketed as comedy director Paul Feig takes a dark turn to a thrilling source material, whatever. Didn't land for me. I thought it was, some fine central performances from Blake Lively and Anna Kendrick, but the movie was really a bit of a mess. Again, I've reviewed that because I saw it, and in retrospect, I didn't like it at all, particularly when a lot of people did. So I feel a bit disappointed that I didn't like it more.
Okay.
Cathy, lastly, what are a few things you didn't get to see this year but really want to?
Okay, so top of my list on this one is The Little Stranger, which was directed by Lenny Abrahamson, who I love, and starred Donald Gleeson and Ruth Wilson, both of whom I love. And we were all set to go to the London Irish Film Festival, and Kelly, who organises that festival, had really kindly gotten us tickets not only to the movie but to Q&A with Lenny Abrahamson. And then we couldn't get a babysitter and childcare all fell through. And anyway, honestly, that was my most disappointing of the year because I wanted to see the movie and I really wanted to go and support that festival. So next year we'll go. The other one is 8th Grade, which I'm dying to see.
What's that?
It's a movie about a girl in the 8th grade in America that everyone is absolutely raving about. Apparently it just excruciatingly captures that year of your life. And I mean, I've not been able to rent it. I've been trying, and if it was in cinemas here, I completely missed it. The Hate You Give, which everyone's raving about, which I'd love to see, and again, if it was in the cinema here, I missed it, and it's not available to rent yet. Sorry to Bother You is in the cinema, but I didn't get to see it. The Wife, I really wanted to see, didn't get to see it. They Shall Not Grow Old, which aired on BBC, which is the Peter Jackson documentary, which has been sitting on our planner since it aired and we haven't watched. And finally, of course, Roma, which just got released like last week on Netflix, and we haven't had a chance to watch. Which everyone's saying is the best movie of the year, so hope to enjoy it when I do see it. Okay,
I'm literally just going to name these movies because I've got loads of them.
Okay.
So, things I really want to watch that I haven't seen. Mandy, Roma.
Mandy?
Mandy, the Nicolas Cage one. It's supposed to be excellent.
Okay.
A Star Is Born, you've seen, I really want to see.
Yeah, loved it. Oh, that should have been in my honourable mentions, apologies.
The Greatest Showman, I cannot wait to watch. It's actually on Christmas Day. On Sky have gifted it to us.
Yeah.
Did I tell you that?
I know that, but we already have Sky Cinema, so we already have it.
I'm watching it with my family, and by the way, so are you, since you're going to be there. Anna and the Apocalypse looks fun. Ralph Breaks the Internet. I love the first Wreck-It Ralph. American Animals is supposed to be an interesting blend of documentary and sort of fictionalized recreation. Isle of Dogs, I'm a big Wes Anderson guy, still haven't seen it. Teen Titans Go to the Movies looks like a lot of fun. The Old Man and the Gun with Robert Redford looks great. Searching, Sorry to Bother You, Black Klansman, Death of Stalin, Three Identical Strangers, which is a documentary which looks amazing, like the incredible true life story. The Hate You Give, which you've mentioned. Won't You Be My Neighbour, which is the documentary about Mr. Rogers.
Oh yeah, that looks
in the
good.
States. Paddington 2 I want to see. And lastly, another documentary which looks amazing is Free Solo, about this actual mountaineer guy who basically free soloing is climbing up a mountain without any mountain gear. It's what Tom Cruise did in Mission Impossible 2.
Yeah.
But except that this guy did it for real, and just the poster for this movie alone is insane.
But let's face it, it won't be as good as Mission Impossible 2, the best of the Mission Impossible franchise.
Oh, stop. Please don't.
Right, we've done a pretty good job. As you can see, there's a lot of movies we wanted to see this year that we didn't get to. Hey ho, next year will be a better year. Funnily enough, given that we do a film podcast and go to the cinema every week, so don't get to see all the movies you want. But thank you so much to everyone for listening to us this year. This is our favourite episode of the year to record, and it's just such a laugh, really. Like, putting these lists together, we really enjoy it. It's really hard because, it makes you realise all the things that you should have seen, but it's a nice way to reflect on the year as well, like, not just what movies we saw, but who we saw them with, because on this podcast we have, like, our favourite people in the world come on as guests, and we mentioned lots of them who've been on, and we love going to the cinema with the guests, and we just love our podcast, don't we?
But also, big thank you. We love doing this, and big thank you to all of you who are listening, because really, it would just be so pointless if it was just us talking to ourselves.
Well, we did it for a long time when we'd no listeners until suddenly we'd load the listeners. But actually, it's a passion project, and honestly, whether or not anyone was listening, I'd still do it.
But we love talking to you guys, and it's so much fun, the feedback that we get, and just chatting with you guys, because you guys love movies as much as we do. So quick segue, if you do want to talk to us, please chat to us at the Cinemile, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and we're looking forward to hanging out with everyone in 2019 more. And yeah, so I mean, in general, I lament the state of movies and cinema, but actually looking back, there have been some amazing stuff this year, and that's why I am glad to end the year on these episodes, because it's a bit of a reminder that all is not lost.
Yeah, and so if you did enjoy, I'm going to do my last plea of the year. If you did enjoy listening to us, and we do this in our spare time, out of our own money, just for passion and love. We both have jobs. We don't do this as a full-time job. If you like the podcast and you want to support us, all we ask is that if you listen to us from Apple Podcasts, that you subscribe and that you rate us, because that really helps us. That's kind of the currency of podcasts. It's a really easy thing to do. You just search for the podcast in the app and you just tap 5 stars. There's really no other star to tap.
But we are on Acast and everywhere else you're listening to podcasts, so wherever you're listening to this,
including Spotify. We got on
subscribe.
Spotify this year. So thank you, and thank you, Dave, for being an excellent co-host, husband and father this year.
Well, thank you. Ditto.
Ditto. Oh, great. So romantic.
No, well, that's
you can tell we're big fans of Ghost.
The thing from Ghost, yeah. No, thanks, Cathy. That's lovely. I'm not. You made me really awkward. I'll tell you what I really think in private.
Okay. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Hi guys, this is Kobi from Flixwatcher podcast and The Wire Stripped. So my best and worst films of the year both came at the end of the year. I'm going to start with the worst, which I decree to be Aquaman. Not the worst film ever made, but it's probably been a really good year for me in terms of going to the cinema. But B, people seem to be saying it's not that bad a film, which I don't think is a reason to recommend it. I just don't think it's that good at all. Some CGI was amazing. Arthur Curry, aka Aquaman, was good. Everything else I thought was atrocious, to be honest with you. The story was bad, dialogue was bad. The best film this year is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I've seen it twice in less than a week, which means it must have been good. Genre-defining animation, so funny, so intelligent. Lord and Miller, who made and produced this film, need to be able to do everything they want to ever until the end of time.
Hello, Cathy and Dave. This is Helen from Flixwatcher podcast. My good for 2018 would be Cold War. It's beautiful, romantic, up and down, crazy love story set against this bleak Cold War. It's just a beautiful, beautiful film. I highly recommend it. And my bad would be Hereditary. It just didn't quite live up to expectations despite the amazing performance by Toni Collette. Bye!
Sam here from the Picturehouse and 90 Minutes or Less Film Fest podcasts. I think 2018 has been a very strong year for films indeed. My Letterboxd account is full to the brim with 4- and 5-star reviews. But my favourite film of the year is Paul Thomas Anderson's Phantom Thread. What a film. Guys, what a film. It's got that wonderful Johnny Greenwood score. We introduced Vicky Creeps to a much wider audience. She is magnificent. And Daniel Day-Lewis in reportedly his last ever screen role. He is so good in this film. So watchable. I've seen this film a couple of times now and I cannot wait to watch it again. Big recommend for that film. My least favourite film this year has to be James Marsh's The King of Thieves. A terrible, terrible, terrible film about the Hatton Garden heist. It feels like it's probably about the 7th film about the Hatton Garden heist. This is the one that stars all those famous old British actors like Michael Caine, Michael Gambon, Tom Courtenay, and Charlie Cox off of Daredevil as the token young one in this film. There's so many things wrong with this film, and it's baffling because it's James Marsh, who's actually a really good director. He did The Theory of Everything and Man on Wire way back when. Anyway, something must have happened in the intervening years. Maybe he was hit on the head or something, because this film is awful. Thanks for all the Cinemiles this year, Dave and Cathy. See you next year. Goodbye.
Hi, Dave and Cathy. Jake here from Ghiblioteque and the Curzon Film Podcast. My favourite film of the year is probably one that ended up on a lot of lists for last year as well. It's Paul Thomas Anderson's Phantom Thread. I'm a sucker for a romance, and this is unlike many others. Vicky Creeps is phenomenal and completely holds her own against Daniel Day-Lewis, who incidentally was robbed at the Oscars by Gary Oldman doing Churchill caricatures in a fat suit. Also, Johnny Greenwood's score has been a tonic during any tough times, instantly soothing. The track The House of Woodcock is one of my most played of the year too. Worst film has got to be Duncan Jones's Mute, which got dumped on Netflix after being hyped for years. The less said about it the better, but it took me 4 tries to finish it, so that tells you a lot. Happy Christmas to you both, and of course to Oscar as well, and to all your listeners too.
Hello, this is Rob Daniel
and Rob Wallace
from the Electric Shadows podcast, and we are here to quickly tell you what was our best film of the year and our worst film of the year. Rob, what was your best film of the year?
My favourite film of the year was First Reformed, written and directed by Paul Schrader, probably still best known as the writer on Taxi Driver. I don't know, I have no idea why this appealed to me. I just thought it was really subtle and intelligent. It was a real interrogation of faith and knowing and not knowing, and it and with some really odd magical realist touches to it. I thought it was interesting. Thought it was a magnificent, really deeply moving piece of cinema.
Cool. Well, my favourite film was The Meg. Not really. So my favourite film was 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. It's a great film. It's one where you think you know who are the heroes and who are the villains, but over the course of the film it all begins to shift a little bit. I thought it was grown up in the best way. It was darkly comic, and it's just a real treat, so you should watch it. What's your worst film?
My worst film of the year? My worst film of the year is, well, you know what, it's also it's probably not quite my worst, but it's definitely my most disappointing. That has to go to Mute, the new Duncan Jones film on Netflix. It's rubbish. Right. It's just utterly unengaging. Alexander Skarsgård as this Amish mute wandering through a vaguely futuristic, I think it's LA, could be New York, it's that Blade Runner generic, in search of his lost daughter. Lots of interest, what could have been interesting elements, clearly some stuff drawn from Duncan Jones, his own childhood, the time he spent in Berlin, but really amounts to absolutely nothing.
Fair enough. My most disappointing film is Hereditary, which I thought was a horror film made by someone who hadn't watched lots of horror films and thought that they were being quite original with what they were doing. Yes, really didn't get on with this. I thought I've seen this all before. I thought it had the silliest ending of any film this year. So I would recommend you don't watch Hereditary, even though it does have one great jump moment in it. And thank you to Cathy and Dave for inviting us on, and Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Hey everyone, my name is Eimear Varian Barry. I'm a very old friend of Cathy and Dave's, and I will be coming on the podcast next year. Didn't make it this year, but it will be next year for sure. My favourite movie of all time and my non-favourite movie ever, Moulin Rouge. I know, Moulin Rouge is like this. Loads of people love Moulin Rouge, and I wanted to come up with something a bit more unique and everything, but you know what? I just love it. It gives me everything that I look for in a film. Like, I cry, so I'm literally traumatized. I absolutely hated Zoolander 2. What are you doing? Stop. You just ruined Zoolander completely, and now I look at Zoolander 1, totally different. Now, the reason why I chose my favourite film and my least favourite film is because I don't have any films to talk about at the moment. I have not been to the cinema in so long because I have 3 children under 5. No, I don't actually. I have 3. She just turned 5. I have 3 children under 6. So going to the cinema to me is just, I just would love to go to the cinema. I have to make it happen. I can't just go willy-nilly like before. So hopefully I will get to go to the cinema in the new year with Cathy, and we will do a review on that film. Okay, I'm going to go now and wrap some Christmas presents. Have a great Christmas. Bye. Can't stop me now. Travel 200 miles, I'm knocking at your door. And I don't really care if you ain't your boy. What's up, danger? Don't be a stranger. I'm right here at your door. I won't leave. I want more. What's up, danger? What's up, danger? Cause I like high chances that I might lose. I might get all on the edge just like you.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What would you say if I told you there's a book that can teach you how to win The Bachelor?
What would you say if I told you producers caught multiple finalists reading that book in this season that's currently airing?
What would you say if I told you the producers don't want anyone to know that their show has been compromised?
How do we know all this? We wrote that book.
I'm Lizzie Pace.
And I'm Chad Colchin.
We're the authors of How to Win the Bachelor and the hosts of the Game of Roses podcast, a bi-weekly podcast where we break down all the biggest plays, errors, and MVPs in the game of reality television.
Listen to Game of Roses wherever you get your podcasts and go to howtowinthebachelor.com to get our book.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.